Alexander Volkanovski's opponent before and after the fight. When Conor McGregor finished his final fight as a featherweight in the fall of 2015, fans just moved on, and the weight class was declared dead in the water, as he had previously stated. Whether or not we think that the 13-second KO was a once-in-a-lifetime shot, the weight class's credibility was severely damaged. For years to come, McGregor's legacy would loom large. The great, a self-assured Australian fighter began rising through the ranks in the post-McGregor era, but no one initially paid him any attention. Welcome back everyone. In today's video we'll be sharing all about Alexander Volkanovski's opponent before and after the fight. Fans never paid attention to him, and the firm never used any buzz to promote his name. However, Alexander Volkanovski eventually carved out a career of such brilliance that he came to personify the term great. Half the time we ignored him, and the other half we didn't like him. It appears that he will continue to rule for many years. Let's begin. Chad Mendes. Alexander Volkanovski won 5 fights inside the octagon over 2 years. While he was impressive throughout, fans and analysts questioned if he could compete at the division's top. Volkanovski declared his desire to enter the top 5 after defeating Darren Elkins at the UFC, and gave him a chance by scheduling a fight between him and Chad Mendes. He had recently returned to the sport after a 2-year hiatus and hadn't lost ground. He easily defeated Mao's Jury in his first bout back, and he was prepared for UFC 232. Volkanovski had never been tested before because Mendes had only ever fallen to the most skilled combatants, rarely without a battle. Mendes and Alexander were physically and intellectually comparable combatants, but Mendes felt that he was faster, more explosive and a better wrestler. Mendes said a young upstart could become famous thanks to him. He demonstrated that he was still at the absolute top of the division and vowed to damage his opponent. Mendes and Alexander Volkanovski began tossing explosives after some initial hedging. Despite facing one of the strongest hitters at 145 pounds, Chad Mendes, Alexander Volkanovski stood in the pocket and brought his opponent out. The eventual champion was dropped and again rocked, but he immediately stood back up and motioned for Mendes to proceed. The former championship challenger was ultimately defeated by Volkanovski, who outlawed and drowned him. Mendes was put down in the second round after a barrage of blows. Jose Aldo. The greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo was up next. Mendes was a challenging opponent, but taking on Jose Aldo in his homeland was another challenge. Aldo, that's a huge problem, especially if you try to take it away from the former featherweight champion who undoubtedly slowed down. Aldo was however physically past his peak and yet a level above the rest of the division. As expected of those two gentlemen, there was no trash talking during the UFC 237 battle. All we needed was a battle between old school and new school. The former champion expressed his confidence in his skills by saying that this bout would appear much simpler than most people anticipated. Aldo was a murderer and Volkanovski was up against him in a hostile Brazilian crowd. Yet Volkanovski had been looking forward to the match for years, and Volkanovski performed admirably on the night of UFC 237. Some had hoped the bout would be as entertaining lesson, but it wasn't. However, Volkanovski was able to control Aldo throughout the competition. He outpaced the Brazilian icon and exhausted him, defeating a hometown favourite unanimously. The silent audience roundly booed him. Although the people of Rio despised him, no one could doubt his ability. He had just finished with Aldo. Holloway had to walk through the fire to defeat Jose. While Volkanovski scarcely felt a thing after the battle, Aldo acknowledged that the defeat hurt him more than the KO victory over McGregor. Immediately after being crowned the victor, Volkanovski went to thank Aldo. Max Holloway. Volkanovski declared him to be Holloway's biggest fear even before he was given the title fight. He had endless cardio and was immune to injury. You were only a little annoyance to Holloway for the 2 or 3 rounds at most. And that was all she had to say about you, because eventually she would drown you. The competitor was certain that he was one that would win, even though the Blessed Express had run ragged on everyone else in the division. When Volkanovski performed inside the octagon, Holloway compared him to a cupcake and remarked that he enjoyed trying a fresh flavour each time. While he had a glitch at 155, when this was his 4th title defence, he was unbeatable in featherweight. He understood the danger Alexander posed to him. Volkanovski referred to him as a cupcake with a chill topping. And during the primary interviews he participated in, Volkanovski kept saying that he was one who stopped the Blessed Express, which seemed to be unstoppable. by taking the championship away from Max Holloway. In its event's penultimate match, Volkanovski ended the blessed era. He kicked the champion's leg viciously at the outset and maintained the ferocity to the buzzer. Even though Alexander the Great had won the division, his battle for the throne was far from ended. No matter how impressive Holloway was throughout the title reign, it was inevitable that it would end a quick rematch. The former challenger was perplexed by choice, but he knew he would sooner or later face the winner again. The UFC scheduled a rematch right away for the UFC 251. Volkanovski had no trouble entering the ring with Holloway for an additional 5 rounds, since the former champion deserved one. Hollywood took notice of this and questioned why Volkanovski acted like a contender rather than the champion. Max Holloway reaffirmed his belief that he had prevailed in the contest and vowed to act coolly inside the octagon. The second bout saw Holloway come out swinging, and the champion initially appeared perplexed as the barrage from Holloway continued for the first 4 rounds. In the opening 2 rounds, the champion was eliminated. Volkanovski woke up as the fight entered the second half and began dominating the exchanges. Brian Ortega. Volkanovski was forced to break from competition after his second victory over Max because of a COVID-19 issue that had progressed to his lungs. The assisted scare in delaying his match with the following opponent, Brian Ortega. However, the champion got back into fighting shape and he was hired to coach against Ortega on The Ultimate Fighter. Volkanovski was different this time in some way. He entered the frame sporting a bald head. Interestingly enough, he appeared agitated when he saw the challenger. Ortega was accused of using drugs illegally by Volkanovski. T-City reacted, and during the build-up the trash talk persisted. Ortega referred to the champion as false and nasty. Volkanovski had minimal energy and was difficult to feed off of. Apart from the interpersonal hostility, there was lingering worry about the champion's health during the dramatic face-off. A few months before, his lungs had been inflamed, and now he was fighting inside the octagon. During the battle, Volkanovski was on another level, likewise at UFC 266. Alexander the Great began the process of putting an end to all the skeptics. T-City had it together. However, the winner was the only 2 steps ahead, and for the bulk of the 5 rounds, opponents rejected submission attempts and applied brutal ground and pound when in his guard, the most skilled wrestler in the group. At the bell of the 5th round, Volkanovski nodded to end the contest and make his second defense of the Featherweight Championship. The 2 competitors shook hands and showed each other respect. During a post-fight interview, a bruised and worn-out protege praised Alexander as a real champion and expressed amazement that he had survived. Volkanovski destroyed his opponent that night, and the myth that he was a point fighter and a championship by birth, he had only just begun. That's all for the video, guys. We'll be back soon with another informative one. Don't forget to like and share. Until next time.